Hey folks and friends, welcome home. I'm Madison Canary, your sour beer queer, and I am here with another sour beer review. Now friends, this has become a real problem. Having this channel has really slowed down my sour beer consumption. I'm kind of not here for it because I just want to drink all the sour beer all the time. And yet I'm also kind of here for it because I have so much fun shooting these videos. I hope you're enjoying them too. So, we are diving in today to another Portland brewery, or another Oregon brewery. I believe this one is Portland, yes it is. This is one that we picked up at the Portland airport, so at PDX on our way out of town. From what I can tell, it was stored warm. I got it at room temperature and shipped warm. So far that hasn't so much affected my experience of the beer, but I always like to note that because just in my mind, sour beers should never get warm. They should always stay cold. What's intriguing about that belief though is that for this beer review, I actually did a little bit of research on the Berliner Weiss style, and the Berliner Weiss style traditionally is actually secondary fermented warm. More about that later. First, let me introduce the beer. So I've never had this one before. I've never been to this brewery. I picked it up just because it was a sour at the airport. And this is Breakside Brewery Passion Fruit Sour Ale. I like passion fruit. I like sour beer. We're off to a good start. It says it is tropical, tart, crisp, and eminently drinkable. Extra credit points for the SAT word. Eminently drinkable also to me says that this is going to be pretty high on the friendliness scale. We'll see about that. So usually I've been kind of chatting about the style of beer and then doing the taste, and I'm going to kind of mix them up today because I want to get this delicious beer in my mouth. Put it in her mouth. Her motherfucking mouth. Anyways, I do not get a first sip today because it's out of a bottle, and it's just not as gratifying when it's out of a bottle. We're still gonna do it though. Tradition. Oh yeah, that's some passion fruit. That's some real passion fruit. It's so pretty. Look how pretty. Oh, you're so pretty. That like caramely yellowy color, nice strong head on it, good amount of carbonation. It smells just like passion fruit. It just smells like you cracked open a passion fruit and stuck your nose in it. It smells so good. Before I review, Berliner Weiss. So what we're expecting out of this beer is a passion fruit forward Berliner Weiss. Now, I usually do not drink Berliner Weisses because I feel that they're usually too sweet. I like my sours to taste sour. If I don't really want a fruity or a candy flavor. I personally, just my palate, I like a really strong fruit in the beginning, but then I want a kick at the end. I want that sour kick at the end. It leaves me wondering why Berliner Weiss is even a sour beer. Now I know why it's a sour beer because it is created through fermentation, but I feel like it should almost be in its own category because I just don't get a lot of sour from it. However, you're also talking to a girl that wants to drink sour in the rye all the time, which is just rye soured and fermented in a barrel. So clearly, I am a little bit biased towards the sour side. But anyways, Berliner Weiss, traditionally a 3% alcohol by volume. This bad boy is a 5. Thank you, Breakside. Like the little bumper, very nice of you. But this is also another reason I don't do a lot of Berliner Weisses. To me, I get a lot of fruit, I get a lot of sugar, and then I don't get a lot of buzz, but because of the sugar, I tend to get the headache. So doesn't really work out for me in the end. I want more sugar, I want higher levels of alcohol, I want less fruit, and I definitely don't want a headache. Who wants a headache? So this is made, Berliner Weisses are made with malted barley and wheat, and the malts are usually kilned as in put in a kiln at low temperature to prevent discoloration. So that's where we're gonna get the caramely, the yellow, and just that real pretty, not clear because you can't see through it, but just like the real vivacious and vibrant color. It is fermented with yeast and lactic acid. So traditionally a Berliner Weiss does not have lactobacillus in it. So it's not gonna have the creaminess from the lactobacillus, but will sometimes have the creaminess from the yeast fermentation. And onto our little tidbit, as I said at the beginning of the video, traditionally Berliner Weisses were actually were poured into the bottle and stuck into warm sand in order to secondarily ferment. So there was nothing else added to them. They were poured into a bottle and stuck into the sand, and that's where they got their fermentation from. Obviously the warmth needs to be there in order to encourage the yeast and the lactic acid to take action on the beer. So it makes sense. But I just, again, find it interesting because I think of your sours needing to be cold. Now, of course, sticking beers in the sand, we're talking about a long time ago. We're not talking about any time in the recent history, but I still thought that was really interesting. So a Berliner Weiss is, as you might guess, or was very popular in Berlin. Now it is said that it's not as popular, but at one time, most breweries in Berlin were brewing some kind of Berliner Weiss. They are usually more, or traditionally, they were a little more bland or a little more just kind of base out of the bottle, but then were mixed with different fruit juices and different kind of little mix-ins that were poured into the cup first to make them more intriguing. Now these are going to be, or this beer specifically from Breakside says it's going to be secondarily fermented with passion fruit. So the passion fruit's actually part of the fermentation process. But I think that really gives a nod to the fact that they usually brew a Berliner Weiss first and then they add the fruit afterwards. A little like tidbit that apparently all Berliner Weiss people like to talk about is that this beer was drank by Napoleon Bonaparte and his crew. Yeah, you know, he was just running hundo deep. It was cool. But they called it the champagne of the North. So it's really interesting that that is the quote, because I actually tend to think of sour beer as my cheap champagne habit. Because when I look at the price of sour beer, I think, oh, that's really expensive. But then when I think of the cost of a good bottle of champagne, I'm like, it's not that bad. Anyhoozle, the beer, this one, in my hand, needs to be in my mouth. Definitely getting passion fruit. The nose is pure passion fruit. The palate is very passion fruit. I'm really enjoying the creaminess of it. It's very smooth and kind of soothing as it goes over the tongue. And one thing I love about Berliner Weiss, and I read why this is supposed to be similar as in Gozas, and I don't remember exactly why, but I think it is the process of salt during fermentation. Don't hold me to that, but I think it's the process of salt during fermentation. There is this like dryness in the finish. So it's not a flavor, it's not a sour. In fact, I don't get very much sour out of this beer, but there is a dryness, like a palatable dryness that happens. So it's really kind of cool because you get a smooth and a creamy and a very liquid over the tongue, and then you finish very dry at the back of the palate. Definitely lots of passion fruit all the way through, a little bit of salt at the end. Like I said, I barely even get sour from this. Like, I guess if you weren't used to sour, this would be sour. I personally don't even get sour from this, which makes it not one of my go-to beers. If I had researched it first and known it was a Berliner Weiss, I probably wouldn't have bought it. But it did give me this excuse to kind of talk to you guys about Berliners and have this chit chat, so it's all good. But it's not one that I find myself wanting to finish, because to me it just tastes like passion fruit juice, and I'm already starting to feel the headache. that brings us to the friendliness scale. And this bad boy, delicious, fruity, passion fruity, easy on the palate, tastes like fruit juice, I'm gonna slide right up there to very friendly. I would say across the board, if someone is saying to you they don't want to drink sour beer, hand them a Berliner Weiss and you'll probably go off pretty okay. I can think of a few exceptions to that rule, but not too many. So this one is definitely not an exception to that rule. It's a very friendly beer, really easily drinkable, lots of fruit juice, real light sour, and an enjoyable experience. Like I said, not one of my favorites, but that's just because of my palate. It's still a really good, really delicious beer, and would definitely recommend it for those of you that maybe aren't into sours or just like that really fruit heavy beer when you drink a sour beer. So hope you guys enjoyed this kind of little chit chat, getting to know a little more about Berliner Weisses and my review. If you did, please do subscribe, and I release new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Also head on over to my Instagram. I'm the Sour Beer Queer on there so that we can stay connected. Have a good one, you guys.